They're both, I think they're both 2-dayers.
May is the 23rd.
May.
22nd, 23rd, right?
Yeah,
No,
the
23rd,
23rd.
24th, and then June 8th and 9th.
Yeah.
So quick turnaround. Yeah.
So that early part of July probably makes more sense.
Yeah, it does. So if the 7th and 8th work, or one of those, either, you know, they don't work for you.
July is very, I mean, it's very spotty. From July and August, but September, October, those are spotty. But especially July and August.
23, 24.
Okay.
But if you gotta do what you gotta do. I mean, not everybody you can't be.
Right.
Let's do 7th and 8th.
7th and 8th. Okay.
2nd, 8th and 9th is June.
7th and 8th. June 8th.
8th and 9th. So July 7th and 8th.
Remembering that we're probably not going to have anything in October. We're probably not going to have anything early September. I mean, September is probably going to be a tough one. November, depending on, and then have to realize that this committee will have some conversation, you know, after the summer about where this probably goes from here. So
where are we at on any days in August?
So that's the next, I don't, let's see here, gotta go to August. Can you pull up August? Oh, you got it up there, okay. So what did I say? So the 2nd,
Second, third is good. Pretty good.
Yeah.
Commission meeting on the 2nd for 3 of us.
let's skip that.
What's that?
3, 4 is also.
I'm
About
gonna
3,
call
4.
it, just play hooky on
About 3, 4.
that. 3, 4. 3, 4 work?
Yeah.
No?
8, 9.
Eight, 8, 9 doesn't.
Well, I could make it 9.
What about the 1st and 2nd?
First. You gotta look at it. 8, 9.
August.
Lee said he could make it work. Who else?
Well, something's going on 8, 9, it's blocked out. Does Game of Fish have something 8th, 9th of August? 8th that week?
Yeah, we do, but we can work around it if we need to. We'll divide and conquer.
Yeah, 8th and 9th work, it's good for me.
Okay, make it happen.
So August 8th and 9th?
I can't do that.
Oh, okay.
But I could do.
Okay.
You can skip it.
8th and
We
9th,
need-
August
We
8th and
need
9th?
2 days.
We may not. We may be able to make it a 1 day, or we may be able to make
If
that a 1
that's the
day.
case, 8th is better.
Okay, well, let's plan the 8th. Let's just do the 8th on August then. Okay.
Do
Yep,
we-
just the 8th.
Just the 8th.
Just the 8th.
Do we have here are the objectives, right? The things that we want to accomplish between now and then. And
We're gonna-
then
we're gonna
designate
work-
the number
yeah.
of days to do
So
that.
I think
or-
that's something we need to work on at the next, a little bit in the next meeting, probably the 2nd day of the next meeting, because we're gonna have a quick turnaround from May to June.
Mhm.
And so we may not be able to, I don't know how much public comment we're gonna be able to take between the May and the June meeting. And so we're gonna have to make a plan for that.
So can we carve out maybe half an hour at the next meeting?
Memorial Day
to
weekend.
identify those additional issues
Yeah.
that we want to tackle?
Right, yeah, absolutely.
And maybe just, do we need to go back and take that original list that we put together?
So here are the things.
If something else has changed for them, it would be good to at least get that on radar. Even for the public. You know, kind of.
Yeah, I agree. Okay. And we are gonna take public comment here, so,
Gobble, gobble, Pat.
thank you.
See you, Matt.
Ooh, Bye, Pat. Good luck. Is he?
Cranky up.
online.
Todd, do we have anybody online for public comment? You have one.
Okay, shut it off.
Okay, Todd, you had the one submitted you were gonna read.
Okay, this is from a Ed Jenkins. He was saying, first of all, I would like to apologize for not being there in person today. I'm here in East Texas for a family function. Internet situation, rural Texas, is not great. Hello, I'm Ed Jenkins. I'm an outfitter for Western Wyoming in regions G and H for deer. I would like to make some comments about the deer discussion. First, I think that the whitetail and mule deer should be managed with separate licenses. Here in Western Wyoming, deer are facing many challenges. Many of these you all have been discussing over the past meetings. With the declining mule deer numbers over the last several years, increase for the demand for mule deer, the time changes now. I'm in favor of regionalized resident hunters. This would do several things for the game of fish. First, mandatory harvest survey. Mandatory harvest survey. Mandatory, I don't think so. It will still be 100% accurate. I believe that if a hunter goes to buy a license, a deer license, they are told they can't because of the survey. They will jump on it, fill out that, and not accurate. Also, there will be guys that want to sway the data and won't be truthful. With regionalized resident license, it will give the game of fish accurate data, make changes like limited quota when we get that. With game of fish survey, says that only 20% of hunters will hunt areas other than the one they mainly hunt. So this will not affect the majority of hunters. We definitely need to know what that number of hunters that are hunting each area are. One other concern I have in the county, being the #1 county in growth in the state, I'm also concerned that the hunting pressure will get even worse in the next few years when these hunters moving in become residents. I know the mule deer decline is not unique to Wyoming. What is unique is Wyoming has the best people to try to stop the bleeding and hopefully increase the numbers. Again, I apologize for not being there in person. Thank you for your time.
You don't have any others, boss? We have 3 from the public here. Wyatt?
Go. That guy again.
Yes. First thing that you guys need to consider with the type X tags, and Rusty, I think you're talking a lot about the area over between Buffalo and Gillette that has type 2 tags. If there are walking areas, it completely annihilates them. That's the loophole there. Every one of those people sees a walking area, they think that's private land. I can hunt that with this tag. And you have so many people buying that type 2 license and going out to the Beaver Creek walk-in, and that place is like a carcass with maggots in it. I mean, so that's the loophole, and you will kind of ruin your access yes program if there are those within those areas. So that's one major consideration. Another, see in the type X thing, it says regions where elk are over objective. I think we're getting away from this trend that more and more people are buying their lands for the elk. And honestly, their desires may not align very well with the game and fishes. And if they're able to get these type X tags when they're over objective, their objectives are going to be to keep those elk over objectives so they can continue giving these tags at a lot lower draw. Even if, like Larry was saying, if you require them to get a cow tag, that's a $40 investment. I can throw that in the garbage. I mean, all I have to do is apply for it and receive it. I don't have to fill it. And again, public access or even just access onto those private lands. If by allowing access to the public, we harvest more cows and more animals, we're going to reduce the herd numbers. And if we fall out of that over objective range and fall within the game and fish objectives, I don't qualify for that tag anymore. So I think we need to consider motivations from all angles when considering those type X tags. Other few comments. State land or recreation fee. This has kind of been a discussion for that Columbus Peak exchange up in Sheridan County. A lot of people do confuse public land with state lands, and they kind of wrongly assume that they should have a loud voice. And I don't necessarily think that fee should be to increase the amount of use that we can have on, like maybe camping. I mean, the rules could be the same, but what that fee would do is give sportsmen a louder voice and more priority. Public recreation would be a priority for state lands, and public opinion would be more of a priority. So I honestly, as a sportsman, would pay to have a louder voice at the table with state lands when it comes time for land exchanges. So regionalization, yeah, it's not going to solve overcrowding unless we're talking about applying quotas. And just like the report was saying, and Josh alluded to, that's just a gateway to completely limited quota areas. The map that Jennifer had shown us, I don't know if it was last time or the time before that, 20% of the hunters are hunting additional areas beyond their primary. But when she brought up that map, it showed the areas that those people that are hunting multiple areas are primarily hunting. And I think if you put that side by side with the map that Rick showed, to where how exactly we might regionalize deer hunting, I think you're going to see a heck of a lot of similarities. So, I mean, they're overwhelmingly behaving already like you would mandate. I mean, those maps are surprisingly similar. Right when that one came up, I compared it to the other one. And yeah, far northeast Wyoming and far southeast Wyoming, there's a little uptick, but people are hunting the regions already. So that 20%, I don't know what percentage of those are hunting just the adjacent areas around the primary, but yeah, those maps are basically similar, I think. And it was said that we can't control harvest in general areas. That's not really true. We can't limit hunters, but by saying antler deer only, we control harvest. That makes what 70–75% of the deer in that area off limits right there. So that is controlling harvest. And Brian, Director Nesbitt, was alluding to the fact that, you know, hunting is not what's controlling the dropping populations right now. I mean, if we're only harvesting the bucks, and any general hunter can attest to this, you can hunt the piss out of the general area and come back through there in November, and you'll see bucks out there breeding your does. So, one other one here. Again, back to what Josh was saying about mandatory hunter harvest. We, the hunters, are a game and fish resource that they use to manage. I agree that we shouldn't have to estimate harvest. Also, it may be a good way to weed out some of the folks that Game and Fish doesn't necessarily want to help them. If they don't qualify for a tag that next year, if they aren't responsible enough to fill out a harvest survey and aid with the management, are those the people we want slinging lead that are wildlife? My opinion is probably not. One last thing on splitting mule deer and whitetail It's not a strategy to protect mule deer. We can make general seasons whitetail only. It's already been done. We have whitetail only general seasons in the Powder River Basin. Limitations and license type are so flexible that we could eliminate mule deer hunting right now if we wanted to, just by nature of what we can do there. We don't need to split them to manage them separately within the deer regs. Northeast Wyoming, where Ogden's at, we could make your area a 3-day general or limited quota for muleys and a separate month-long whitetail rut tag. Those capabilities exist in our regs currently. I don't mean to offend people, but desire to split the species for management purposes, to me, indicates a misunderstanding of the capabilities of our current regulations. This has been a long conversation that is only effectively going to change the header on your license. When all said and done, just make sure way more is not said than done. Thank you all very much.
Any questions for Wyatt? Thank you, Wyatt.
Thank you.
Rex?
Thank you, guys. So this is what you've been doing for almost a year. This is a little long. I do appreciate what you've done. I just wanted some final thoughts. Number one, I appreciated the mule deer conversation. I think you're on the right track. If I could share one quick story to emphasize a point. I lived in Idaho in 1995 when they dropped the wolves in there. And I told them, I said, this is going to be an unmitigated disaster, do something right away. I said, these wolves they'll take out these elk herds if you just let them go unmanaged. And people didn't really think too much of it, 1995, I don't remember what they dropped in there, 35 wolves, something like that. But by the time 1995 came around, the northern Idaho elk herd had gone from 16,000 down to 1,600. And I told them, I said, I told you this was going to happen. But you thought that everything would work out. The mule deer situation in Wyoming is a crisis, in my opinion. Things start out slowly, okay? It's not just a straight line. The descent could happen. So my numbers are right, Brian. There was 500,000 mule deer in 30 years ago, and now there's 300,000. Close. So that's 200,000 mule deer in 30 years. If the young animals start to be harvested by predators or general hunters or whatever, and then the older ones start to die from CWD or just old age. You could literally lose 200,000 mule deer in half the time that it took to lose the first 200,000. It's kind of like what happened with the wolves. They got started slowly, but by 15 years, it knocked out this entire elk herd up there. I could see the same thing happening with the mule deer. Lost 200,000. Ogden's right. I mean, there's more hunting pressure. It is going to be a crisis, is what it's going to be. And I hope you will consider. I can speak with some authority on this. As a veterinarian and a wildlife, I'm almost a wildlife biologist. I think instead of taking a concerned approach to this, that you should take some drastic measures. I think the state has got to go to limited quota immediately. Immediately. Don't wait till next year. Don't wait to see how it all plays out, because this thing is going to crash. And the mule deer are such a great natural resource for Wyoming. I love big mule deer bucks. Boy, nothing better. They rival big bulls, big elk bulls to me. but I can tell you that this thing's going to turn bad. And so I would like you at least to put it on the agenda that you discuss, recommending that the mule deer go to limited quota. It is that important. And I hope 5 years from now, 10 years from now, we're not still talking about this subject and there's $200,000 or 200,000 less mule deer. I mean, it will turn into a crisis, I guarantee you. And it's pretty much already there. CWD could get out of control quickly. There are some things that if I could help Brian, I will. That mule deer herd up in Riverton, I guess, is getting quite a few. There's some areas that probably got to be shot out. But I want to help. Whether I become the governor or not, I want to help. The last thing I can say from the discussion today was I think it's a mistake to charge an access fee or whatever to resident hunters, recreationists go on state land. I think it's a big mistake. Because when I go out there, and I've been talking to a lot of people, they're mad. They are mad that they can't access this ground. Now, I forgot your name, I'm sorry. Jim, I realize that public land administered by the BLM and Forest Service is different than the state trust land. But in many residents' eyes, it's all public land. They don't see the big difference. And you know, really, it is state land. Everybody that's a taxpayer in this state should have access to it. I think there should be a way to increase access, and I would not raise fees. Rusty, you guys made a motion, you voted on it, but I would suggest that you reconsider this after you've had some public opinion. Because I guarantee you're going to raise a firestorm over it. They're mad already. Start raising fees on them to go in there, then they're really going to get ticked. And I have hunted, probably didn't know I was on state land. You know, it's kind of confusing out there. You don't know where you're at sometimes. You get up in the mountains, you come down in the foothills, you get into some state land, you may not even know you're on it. Go through a gate, cattle on it. Well, is it private ground? Is it state ground, state lease? Most hunters, at least I think, are very careful about when there's cattle, whether they're up in the mountains or on state lease ground. They're not going to be chasing them around. I don't think that I personally am very careful if I shoot that there's no cattle behind me. I think that you ought to give I think that we really ought to give the people of Wyoming a little more respect and credit. I know there's bad people out there who go in there and trash it and whatnot, but it's got to be a really small percentage. Those people could be turned in if you find out who they are. But for the most part, I think give them some access to that ground. And don't charge them. Don't charge them because it's only going to make matters worse. So thank you guys. I probably won't come back to any more of these because I got a lot of people to talk to. But I really do appreciate everything that you're doing. And just from listening to you, you're an intelligent bunch. And I think the state of Wyoming is good to have you discussing all these issues.
Thanks, Rex.
Any questions for Rex? Okay, we did have one online, and then we have one more here in person. But let's do the online one first, because the last one here has a use for the PowerPoint.
Fonzie's not.
Fonzie's not on there.
Okay.
Okay. So Rusty. Fonzie's on there now? Okay, sorry.
Okay.
All right, Fonzie, you're up.
It'd be funny if you said, hey, hey, hey. Hey. Fonzie, you there?
Bubble Haskell's? Yeah.
What's that? Jim?
Well, there's a family in Level, they have Haskell's, so it's spelled the same way.
Fonzie is originally from Sweetwater County. His dad used to be the Sweetwater County sheriff.
Oh, okay.
He's a Rock Springs graduate. He's been up in that part of the country for 20 years. Fonzie, you there? Okay. All right, Rusty, we're not gonna have you sit back down this time.
Here. Got on?
Yeah.
Were you gonna bring up those slides here? Hi, everybody. Rusty Kaiser, Wyoming native. Grew up in Kemmer. Now I live in Pinedale there with my family. You can have the first slide there. I'm a wildlife biologist, but I'm not here today representing my agency or my profession. I'm here representing my family and the many hunters out there who are concerned about some of the proposed changes, resident region being one of them. And I know this group talked about this today, and it's kind of done. But I think my comments are still pertinent today because they pertain to some of the things that were just said and some of the things that I heard the group discussing today that could become topics in the future. And so I'm going to go ahead. I drove from Pinedale. I'm going to say something. I don't know. Yes. So thank you for entertaining me. I know we're all burnt out and ready for dinner. And I was going to do this as a handout, but I knew some people were online, some of the task force members, so that's why I did this. This is a title page of a document that Mr. King did not talk about today. It was a follow-up, actually, after the resident region report that you guys saw today. In 2018, the Game and Fish had the recommended strategies to manage mule deer hunting. And in this document, they cover not only resident regions, but 8 other management strategies to address any concerns for mule deer. This is just a few years ago. So this isn't new stuff. You know, the discussions you guys are having today have happened many, many times. Next slide, please. And I just want to, this one comes from the executive summary, the conclusion here. After thorough review of the analysis, consensus of the report committee, and our preferred course is to maintain the existing system of deer management and hunting strategies in Wyoming. These are the professionals out there who don't take this lightly, as has been said before today. This was a very thorough assessment, and it put a lot of thought not only to the biology, but also the social aspects of it. Next slide. And in that report, they referred to the general licensed deer region report when it came to resident regions, and you guys have talked about that a lot today. This same report here, go ahead and hit the next slide, they came up with the same conclusion. The vast majority of the division personnel don't support doing this, and this will inevitably lead to a statewide limited quota mule deer management. What's interesting about that is even many of the proponents that I've been involved with through season setting meetings and other things that are proposing resident region say but they don't want limited quota. Well, the assessment the Game and Fish did in every scenario they analyzed in this report ended up inevitably with statewide limited quota. And there's discussions on whether that should, we just heard a minute ago, whether these are good or bad, and you guys hear a lot of opinion, a lot of squeaky wheels. You got a lot of public comment on this, and it could be a kind of a controversial thing. I don't want to give you my opinion necessarily. I want to look at some data on these types of issues. And since resident region has already kind of been squashed in this group, this applies to a lot of other things you discussed, what I'm going to talk about now. Examples of how public perception might lead to deception. And then on a task force like this, it's very important to listen to the data and get the facts and make sure we're not just listening to some disgruntled squeaky wheels, that we're listening to the masses of people. You guys are representing big portions of people in Wyoming. Many of you rely on their votes. And we need to be careful we don't cater to a few squeaky wheels out there. Next slide, please. Some of the data I have, my experience is in Western Wyoming. And in fact, in the commission meeting last week, that's where most of the comments toward making change came from. Were some small group from Star Valley. And so I want to talk to that today because this is where I have data and everywhere where I've looked up the data. The Wyoming range mule deer herd has been said today is actually a pretty strong herd in the state. And there's always talk, though, we just heard a comment a minute ago, how we got to stop the bleeding. There's a crisis. It's horrible. You know, you can look at this mule deer trend for what it's worth. We can argue about it all day. I don't see any major crisis in this trend. We can argue about how the data was taken or what it was. I want to point out that in 2018, this number right here, that wasn't a population model. That was an actual count. The Game and Fish got helicopters and flew. Massive grids, spent a lot of money. That's an actual count of deer. So those naysayers on models and things, what it did is it verified that the models were accurate because it was right there. And what I want to point out on this graph is you see the oscillations up and down. In general, we're hovering around 30,000, up and down, up and down. You can guess what that is. It's not because hunters are out there killing them all. It's because of the winters. You get big winters, you get die-offs. They come back up, they die off again. And so we gotta keep in mind when we talk limited quota and all these other ideas that we can only control so many things, and weather is not one of them. To the comment, I think Pat's gone. Why the Game and Fish doesn't respond maybe so quickly to some of these that people would like. You got to remember these. Biology isn't a simple thing that we can knee-jerk and fix right away. These are long-term trends. These are long-term cycles that happen, and we can't just make a quick change and solve something immediately. And we know that through the hunting and the management things we've talked about today, that's not going to solve this perceived problem anyway. Let's go to the next one, please. This is pretty telling to me. We can argue about populations all we want. Maybe there were more deer back in the heyday. What do we have now? What are we dealing with now, and what are we capable of? You saw in the population trend, we hover around that 30 up and down. When we get up closer into the 40s, Dr. Monteith's research shows that we actually start losing health and productivity of our does. Maybe we can't have all these deer that we think we can have. Maybe it's not healthy. But I want to just show how healthy things are. I'm tired of the doom and gloom. Look at this top graph. We're getting $45 per 100 does of the large winter range. I don't know how many of you are familiar with buck to doe ratios. That is an astronomical number. That is a lot of bucks on the ground. In fact, you won't find that many hunt units in the state, let alone in the West. And that's what's going on there. And you can see after the last heavy winter we had, what's happening? Going back up. Same thing with the fawns. This year, 79 per 100 were counted. That's the highest in over 20 years. The does are doing their job. And again, Dr. Monteith's research in their ultrasounds that they just conducted in March, there's lots of pregnant does, lots of twins. And here in a few weeks, they're ready to rock and roll out there and start putting fawns on the ground. With this mild winter we had, we're going to expect population growth. So things are looking pretty good, but I hear all the doom and gloom. I hear at the commission meeting, and I've heard stuff today about how there's a crisis and we've got to do something. This is so horrible. I see some good things happening. And we are doing things. The Game and Fish, there's unprecedented research going on, habitat treatments, highway crossing structures, more being done for mule deer in this state right now than in history. So it's not like things are happening. Let's go to the next slide, please. Suspense. Okay, so that's the biology, right? Biology, maybe not as bad as we thought in some herds. I hear a lot today about the hunter numbers. What are the hunter numbers? There's so many hunters, we can't have a good experience out there. This is off the Game and Fish website. And correct me if I'm wrong, Director Nesbitt, number of active hunters probably comes from some surveys. Licenses sold is pretty tangible. So those who want to argue if the surveys are accurate or not, let's stick to these ones. Licenses sold over a 10-year period, 68,000 down to 65. When the Game and Fish did their assessments on changing hunt structures or not, back in the 16, 17 range, they were using this data when they conducted it this year. It's down almost 7,000 tags statewide. So this is data. It's not my opinion. I'm not seeing the dramatic increase in all these hunters that's causing all these problems out there. Unless they're all poaching and they didn't buy licenses. Because if they bought licenses, they're in those numbers. And I see the same thing, next please. The same thing in the Wyoming range, in the Grays River, right? The iconic Grays River where people go to hunt big deer. Total hunters, down, dramatically down from the past, but even in the past couple of years. Last year, went down again. And we heard, as Commissioner Doobie said in the commission meeting, about the influx of people and all the population growth, and that they're all hunters, and we're experiencing this massive wave of hunters. This is the data. This isn't my opinion. This is the data. And I get it. I'm a small town guy. When people move in, it feels like a crisis. You get a bunch of people moving in your neighborhood, they feel encroached, and we're a far cry from the Wasatch Front. We're a far cry from the Front Range of Colorado, who have had to change their hunt structures. And our data doesn't support growing numbers of hunters with the growing population. Yeah.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
It's not necessarily maybe a data's data. What's really important is how many days did those guys hunt in 1991 versus how many days did they hunt in 2020? Because if they only hunted 1 or 2 weeks, 4 days total versus somebody that's hunting 8 or 10, that is an increase of people during the hunting season. So it's not just
you mean time spent out there.
100 days. Did you look at that? And I'm not saying
I haven't put it on
change.
here. It's on the template I showed previous. That's one of the statistics you can look up, but
Yeah,
I
I
don't
know.
have it here today, so I couldn't.
But that might answer some of the question. There's perception of hunter crowding.
Less people that are spending more time or something out there. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
my question, Rusty, was the last slide, which that number that looked like there was less licenses sold. Well, we cut 5,000 licenses from my county alone in the last few years. So I mean, there's some of that is.
So that means there's less hunters. You got 5,000 tags, there's less hunters, right?
Well,
that's
just
my
because
point
there's
here.
a heck of a lot less animals. So
Yeah.
I get it. I get it, but there's a correlation. I don't think there's less people that want to hunt. I mean, look at how many people are sending in.
Well, it doesn't matter whether they want to or not. This is how many people bought licenses. This is how many were active, 10,000 less active hunters out there. And so I get what you're saying, that could be a factor. If they want to hunt, they can't get tags or something, especially non-residents and things. But for people to say they're actually seeing these people out there.
Gotcha.
They're not seeing the people who wanted to hunt. They're seeing people who hunt that. So good point. But that's my point here is the crowding. This doesn't reflect the crowding in my view of the data.
I guess the rest of the question I would have is are we seeing fewer hunters, but they're concentrating in different areas? See what I'm saying? Yes, granted, there's 7,000 less, but if they have less areas to hunt, then you're going to add, as Senator Hicks said, how many days are they hunting? That could be the perception of crowding. Granted, there are fewer hunters.
And that could be happening. I can't speak to a lot of other places. I don't have many other places, but I don't see that here. There hasn't been anything to restrict. This is predominantly all public land on the Wyoming range where most people hunt these deer. They wouldn't be restricted in space, sometimes in time. That's why I'm not in real favor of shortening the seasons or even some of the common opening discussion has been going on. I think keeping them more space and more time is going to keep them rubbing shoulders with each other.
Your data appears really valid, your big public land areas, but I think what it doesn't reflect is, particularly to get to Black Hills, 30 years ago, huge amounts of those private ranches were hunted by Wyoming. Now, that end of the world's changed. You just don't see it anymore. Really, the only place is private in the whole county as a whole that provides hunting. This place that have too many different guys like us let on quite a few, but 30 years ago, you can knock on doors if you live in Gillette or Jasper, you probably could find someone in Crook County who will hunt on the place. Might not be the best, but you find a place to hunt. I don't know where you find them. So the Game and Fish keeps the numbers of a few people, but there's not many of them.
It's a lot more difficult.
So what it's done, it's taken big chunks of those hunters who used to go there. They're now applying pressure to that public ground. But I guess to me, your statement about Front Range, Colorado, and the Wasatch Front, it's coming here. That's what we're talking about. Is how do we plan when we become that? Because all you got to do is drive to Cheyenne and watch what's going on down there. Casper, the ring around this town. Compared to 15 years ago, Casper seems Gillette, go out Sleepy Hollow and out through your country. I mean, we have significant impacts in Wyoming right now, and it's not really started yet. That's what I look at in this task force. I get what you're talking about today, but I didn't get onto this to deal with issues today. That's been part of my frustration with it. Is I'm looking for my grandkids. What are they going to have left?
And I agree. It's smart to pre-plan and be ready for things. I think there's a delicate balance there, and Director Nesbitt's professionals out there consider that when they do this. Is do we change when the data doesn't support it because one day it might do that, or do we wait until the data starts showing? When that 45 per buck starts getting down, way down below objective, down below the 20s, down into the teens, and it hovers there. And it's not because of winners. It's just we got a problem. And when the hunter numbers flip, all of a sudden this is just shooting straight up. And I'll get just a couple other slides that I want to express too.
But I'd like to see all the areas.
I'd
like to see all the areas. The director said that, obviously Wyoming range is solid. Apparently the Grays range is as well, but I think Senator Hicks will tell you the charts don't look like that down there where he's at.
And the reason I talked about this today is because that's where the comment came from at the commissioner meeting. It was for Western Wyoming. That's where the comments have come from for newly formed associations online and other things. So that's why I focused here. And what, I know we've kind of, the resident region thing, you guys voted, and you said that's a done deal anyway, but I want to use this as an example for all the discussions you guys have to weed out perception and reality. Because to me, I'm seeing real things here. So of the hunters, go ahead, that's fine. Of the hunters out there, this is pretty self-explanatory. The light color are satisfied or very satisfied on their hunt survey. The red, they either marked dissatisfied or very dissatisfied, and then there was some neutrals that they put in here. This is pretty telling. So the biology says there's a lot of bucks out there for people to kill. The hunter numbers say they're not going up, and people are saying we're having a heck of a good time out there. And you see a little blip here after the winter, the mild years, and then still more happy than not. And here we are climbing back up again. That's in the Grays River. Next slide. Here's in the Salt River. Same way, same trend. And we see it, and I can show you Labarge, all the surrounding this Wyoming range herd. And that's what I get at when you hear comments from people that say it's horrible out there. We've got a major problem, but all the hunters are saying we're having a good time out there. We're happy. We're satisfied. We're very satisfied with our hunting experience. Isn't that what we're managing for? I mean, the animals and the people. We talked about that today, and the data is very, very clear. Now, I do know that most of the comments actually last week were made by outfitters that hunt this area. And I'm not an outfitter, and so I don't know, maybe they had some other things that they knew, some pieces of data that I didn't know. So I did some research. Next slide. This is off of the Wyoga.org. Big Guys Outfitter Association. Right on the front page, if you just scroll down, there's an article by Cy, and then you get down here, and it was updated the last time in 2019. But my key piece of information has a picture on it, so. Suspense, what is it? What is it?
67%.
It's 83.
93.
Yeah. So of all the people, all the clients who were guided in this state, this isn't West Wyoming, of all the clients who went out with an outfitter for deer, you gotta trust me, 83, right? 83%. Over 8 to 10 people got their bucks. Again, when that number starts dropping down and people can't even find deer and get their bucks, and the outfitters are struggling to even stay in business because they can't give people their deer, no one wants to come out with them, then we'll talk. And this is statewide. Let's go to the next slide. We just heard a comment from Mr. Jenkins, who spoke at the commission meeting. So I looked up, maybe he's having troubles in Western Wyoming. This is a direct quote off the website. They're offering an 80% success rate. Mr. Heiner was at the same meeting and said, you know, we've got to do something. We've got to make a change. 97% was the last year reported. It's 20. 97%. Everyone who hunts there gets a deer. They're not small deer. You can look at the website. I encourage you to it. Beautiful bucks. Bucks that I'd love to have on my wall. And the testimonies of the clients had a great time. They can't wait to come back next year. Had a fantastic time. They were highlights. This lines right up with what the public said in the previous graphs. It lines up with what the biology supports. If there's that many bucks, people are going to have a good time. And it lines up with what the game and fish professionals said in their assessment that said, no, not right now. This isn't the time. Things are okay. We'll keep trying. We'll keep doing what we can to keep working on populations and other things with habitat treatments and everything else. But hunt structures, no, now's not the time. And the people have spoken. And so I just throw this out there now that you guys are moving on to other topics. If things related to deer or other things come up, please use caution with the squeaky wheels and the people who get under your skin and want you to always telling you what's going on out there. And please rely on data. Do your homework, find out what's really going on out there, and then you don't have to decipher opinions. And go with the masses. The people are speaking out there. We can do this in Wyoming right now. Maybe other states can't. Maybe one day we won't. I don't know. I can't predict that. But right now it's not needed. And heaven knows there's other topics you guys can tackle that might be needed right now. This isn't one of them. Thank you for your time today.
Okay. So, Rusty.
Yeah.
You threw a lot of data out there, and some was a small snapshot. So hunter satisfaction with what we have today, this is the best we've got. I'm okay. I'm satisfied with that. I don't have anything next to any letter next to my name. Just the guy that's been doing this for 38 years, as director has said, I'm an old guy. It's not the same. Yeah, you're killing. Some of those guys are killing 90% on bucks, 97% on bucks. But they're not the same bucks. I can guarantee you up there in the part of the country I'm from, you might be able to go out there and kill a buck, get your guys a buck. I quit taking deer hunters because I couldn't get the bucks that I felt should be killed. So again, you've got some data that I think has been cherry picked that's saying a certain thing. But for those of us that have been, and there's a guy sitting right there that I know has killed a lot more deer than I ever did. It's not the same.
So can we compare today to them?
Yeah, that's the question.
I mean, they used to hunt deer on winter range in Pinedale.
Yeah.
But
to say it's still good is I disagree.
Okay. And that's where opinion comes in.
Yep.
I've killed more big bucks in the past 10 years I did my whole life growing up in camera. To me, it's great. Is there a 30-inch around every tree? No. Is it easy? No. Do I do it every year? No. But is that a realistic expectation? I mean, when we've got things, but $45 per 100, I don't know what more you could do. What more would you do? And you can say that's cherry picked. I'm just picking this herd. Maybe your herd is really struggling and Yeah, but that's a good point, because when we talk about limited quota and we talk about resident region, we're talking statewide. And so one change like that is affecting everything. It's
No, I agree
affecting
on that.
people that maybe there isn't as big a problem to try to fix one other area of the state. And so, yeah, I'm not here to say everything's perfect. You guys are full. There's no problems. Come on, I know that's not right. But I just think some of these things need to be taken very seriously and taken with much consideration. I think, is it Rick King? Is his name, Mr. King? These questions were perfect. Ask the question why multiple times before you make a change, because every action has a reaction. And is it something you want to do to the people of Wyoming? Or are we appeasing a few people who might want a little bit bigger buck or this or that? We all want big bucks and less people. We also have to live in reality. And I can go on with more and more data about that, but we're out of time and you're all hungry. So
Larry had
go ahead.
No, I kind of like with Lee, you know, I can pull data up, data is not a problem, and I go there and I pull all the data out from Platte and Converse County and look at numbers for the last 20, 30 years. And it paints the grimmest picture you've ever seen. So I'd always say, you know, you're telling us to caution things based on data. I agree with everything you said, but I'd also say what you presented was a specific piece of data. It wasn't a broad picture, the overall health view. And there's a lot of reasons. I think Ogden talked about it 20 years ago in bags of one private branch that leased it to an outfit. There's not a single piece of private property that's not leased. Same number of deer hunters. They're all on the national forest now, except for those big guys that look these three here. And so you have to make inferences in the data too. So everything you showed is absolutely accurate, but it is not an accurate statewide picture. Status of Mule. So that's the caution.
Well, yeah,
You're right. We should
Wyoming range data, so it wouldn't represent statewide.
I know,
Yeah.
but that's what I'm saying. You're saying there's no problems, there is problems.
Oh, no, who said there was no problem?
Well, I just wanted to make sure that.
No, I presented some statewide data though. I presented some statewide data and I presented the Wyoming range data, so I don't expect that would apply everywhere. Yeah, I mean, there's not an argument there. I would say that at the commission meeting, when this thing came up, the only people who spoke vocally against it were people from Star Valley. That's why I thought it would be appropriate to focus on the Wyoming range herd, because that seemed to be who was pushing for this. I didn't hear a lot of that from other parts in the state. So I heard more of it today than I've ever heard. And I don't know. I've never worked or lived in that country. So.
Aren't most units below objective?
What's that?
Aren't most deer units below objective?
That's a professional state.
Yeah, many deer herds across the state are under objective.
But you think everything's okay?
No,
He's not saying everything.
It's
Guys,
not as
guys.
doom and gloom.
We could argue
All
all
right,
day,
yeah.
but I'm not gonna
Hey,
engage tonight.
Rusty,
I think we
thank you.
presented some data.
Thanks,
Thank
Rusty.
you. I appreciate it.
Very good. Thank you.
Size what? Cy. Okay, Cy.
Yeah, I have a question for, make sure I'm not muted. I have a question for Rusty. So Rusty, your data is limited primarily to Western Wyoming. And I do outfit in the Grays River, so I understand what you're talking about. But Western Wyoming hasn't got CWD yet. And when you take and look at Central and Eastern Wyoming, you'll see that our populations are decimated over there. And I think it's interesting that you're carving out the last bastion of basically CWD-free deer in the state, relatively speaking, compared to what's happened in Central and Eastern Wyoming. So I think you're doing a disservice to all those people who are interested in this to only look at one component of the population of the state of Wyoming.
So full disclosure on that, I'll just be honest with you. I went to the commission meeting and a bunch of folks, outfitters from Star Valley, spoke up that this was a major problem. I came to this meeting in rebuttal to that with some data. They never showed up. So I of course I didn't come talking about the rest of the state. I don't have data there and I haven't looked into it, and heaven knows I'm one person here, so I appreciate that sentiment that you guys are saying. Just know where I'm coming from. I didn't come here to say statewide, all the data statewide, could be here all night. I came, like I went to the commission meeting. We had some battles at some season setting meetings. We've got some things going with some groups over there that think things are really bad over there. And I just wanted to say, even the folks who are saying it's bad are saying it's really good. And so we can argue about it all we want. All I know is when you make these decisions, please consider the data. Thank you.
I have one more question for you. One more question. So is $44 per 1,000 does a good number, or would it be better?
45 per 100 is absolutely outstanding. It's at the high end of the objective for that unit. 30 to 45 is what a special management unit of the Wyoming range targets, and that's at the very high end. So that's a very good number. So
let me ask you this: is that okay to only have that number with 10,000 deer, or would it have been better to have that with 50,000 deer like we used to?
Well, it for sure be better. We had 30,000 deer, and the objective is at 40. And the last time we approached 40, conditions started getting rough with these deer. We had a bad winter, and they had a die off. So, I mean, we could bring in Dr. Monteith again. He could explain some of that. It's a biological argument. Yeah, everyone wants more deer. Conditions have changed out there. Our habitat's different. We've got a lot of things going on. Winter range, summer range. Our expectations needs to be real. The 60s and the heydays everyone wants to talk about, we need to get back to that. I think we need to have a reality check and see what we've got, what's working, listen to the professionals, and make good, sound decisions. And if there's a reason to change, let's change. But if there's no real reason, then we need to think about, should we move on to other topics until that reason becomes more pronounced? And we just need to really know what the reasons are.
And you need to take into consideration CWD. Your presentation did not consider CWD and its effect on.
I was here to read about the changes in hunting structures where people kill deer. CWD is out of my hands.
All right, so Larry, thanks Rusty. or Larry got the last.
Yeah, but I really appreciate you coming and presenting the data from a very personal level. I'll be over the top next year.
So just really quick before we wrap up, thank you all for staying later. We've actually got out of here a little early the last few times, so we're making up this time. I want to thank. I don't think everybody knows how much communication that we get from the staff on Easter, on weekends, on late at nights, and all of those kind of things. So I want to thank all of you guys for all of that. They answer it, they get us the answers, they come over here and show us the answers, they do everything that we have ever asked, and they also do the other job that they're doing all the time. So thank you guys so much. And the meals, and you're coordinating the rooms and all of that. Thank you. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you for whipping those up, Brian.
Yeah.
See you guys.
All right.